Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magic is Real. I'm Shannon Torrance. I'm your host. I'm a psychic medium and a junkie for all things spiritual, which is why I host this podcast. Today, I'm here with Nicole Linde. Nicole is an evidential psychic medium, and I know her because I follow her on Instagram and we have some friends in common. And I can vouch for the fact that she is legitimate. And so I wanted to have her on today to talk about mediumship and her spiritual journey. So thank you, Nicole, for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really, when you asked me, and I know we have been following each other for a while, but I kind of like went a little deeper, like just a little bit, seeing like what your style is and stuff. I was like, oh, I totally like jive with you. So I appreciate you asking me.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, I'd like to start by having you share your story. Who are you? Where do you come from? How did all of this come about for you?
Yeah. And I know it's always such a big question, right? So currently I live in Minnesota, but I've also lived on the West Coast for 20 years. I've lived in California and in Oregon. So I've kind of been around. And let's see, I teach. So I teach online classes. I teach mediumship primarily, but also intuitive development. And I also do mediumship private readings, intuitive readings in my office, and then also online, phone. Let's see what else. And I also just did a retreat. It was the first time that I've ever done that before. So that was really magical too.
Where did you go for your retreat?
So I went to a lodge called Wisteria Wellness, and it's in Pollock Pines, California, which is kind of in between Sacramento and Tahoe. So it's
Okay.
it's in the mountains, and it's a really beautiful land, and hosted by Naomi. You can look it up on still on my website. I haven't taken it off yet. So it was really great. There was some people who came that have been students of mine and friends now, and then some new people as well. It was a great. Just the energy was awesome. It was in the forest primarily, so there was a lodge that kind of had like land, and there was a big dome where I got to teach some intuitive and mediumship, and then some writing, kind of automatic writing stuff, and do some readings. So it's really
That's
special.
so cool. I wish I could have been there, but it's in my future. So
Yes,
I'd love
next
to hear
time.
about, yeah, I'd love to hear about your, whatever you're comfortable sharing about your childhood, your
Okay.
spiritual beliefs.
Yeah.
Did you know you were a medium early on and that sort of thing?
Right. So I feel like it was one of those things where in hindsight, you look back and you're like, oh, that totally makes sense. But at the time, life was just like pelting you with stuff. And you're like, what the?
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't have any vocabulary for anything, a lot of things metaphysical at the beginning. So I was thinking back, like, okay, what are some of the things? I was very sensitive as a child. I know that's kind of a common theme, but I was very sensitive and I was very much like an observer. When I think back about myself, I wasn't very like competitive. I was just kind of like in my own daydreaming, sort of very artistic world. Competitive meaning like I wasn't really like natural at like sports. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like things like that. So, and I did have an imaginary friend that my mom has reminded me of. So that's kind of fun to think about who is that person.
Yeah.
Her name was Gertrude, which is a very odd name for
Yeah.
an imaginary friend from like a very young child. Um, and I definitely had, I mean, there's just so much like I definitely had, I would say I was started a channel through my artwork. So that's kind of where I like to like that thread was my way of sharing and expressing things that were going on with me and things that I was connecting to that I didn't have the vocabulary for in verbal.
Yeah. And now you actually do something really cool on your Instagram page, which is that you channel spirit or however you, some people don't call it channeling unless it's
Yeah,
actually
I don't
channeling,
mind
but
the word.
you
I
could,
know
you,
at first I was like, oh, I don't want that word because it's got something.
yeah,
But now I'm like, I don't, that's fine. We know what we're
yeah,
talking about.
we do.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
You connect with spirit on your own. And I assume you ask them, like, do you have a message for one of the people that follows me on Instagram? Because here's the thing.
Mm.
with spirit,
Yeah,
they know how to get to the person that they need to get to. So
totally.
it may seem kind of weird, but what you do is you connect with spirit, and I'm going to have you share it from your perspective. And
Yeah.
then you get an image of them and you start to get information.
Mhm.
And you know that whoever's someone who's out there, whether someone it's a
Yeah,
follower or they're going to share it with someone they know, this sounds like your person,
yeah,
spirit knows it'll get to the right person. So you just
right,
put up the picture and you say, "Hey, I've got this spirit with me and they want to communicate A, B, and C. Can anybody take this information?" Then you
yeah,
have your followers say, "I think that's my grandma. I think that's my sister." And
yeah,
then you dive deeper. Okay, well,
yeah,
can you relate with this? Can you relate with this? And then you
right,
end up posting the validation
yeah,
at you kind of a before and after, which is so cool. And so I'd love to hear about your
yeah,
process and how that all works. And also would love to
right.
hear some of your one or some of your favorite validations that you've received from that practice.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so wild too, because I just feel like as mediums, we're always kind of pushing ourselves in different directions that just feel natural and like we don't know why, but I very much feel like it's part of being a medium to sort of keep expanding. And so my art before wasn't about specific people in spirit, at least people that I knew, is more kind of like psychedelic, is more like channeling, kind of higher, realms, and it definitely had like intense messages going on, but it wasn't like, okay, I'm a spirit communicator is connecting with me specifically. That is someone who has passed. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
could be like an ET or something like that, or like,
Yeah.
a higher person. But so and then so that kind of this whole long process, and then developing as a medium, just like most people develop, and then just recently, like this year, I was like, hey, what if I kind of feel like just drawing, but I don't want to really draw just anything, I'm going to see if spirit will just like sort of intuitively lead me to sort of how they look through my pencil. So it is a little bit different process than when we're connecting, if I was going to read for you or you're going to read for me, because I'm just looking at a blank piece of paper, and I don't know, I would say maybe it's a little bit more like your platform is Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're like a platform medium, I'm just going to see like kind of what they tell me. So just kind of getting into that quiet Zen flow. Okay, you have like a bigger nose, and then erasing sometimes, going back. Sometimes I feel like I'm unable to get a certain part. And then as they're sort of telling me how they look, sort of kind of halfway through, pieces of information come through the same way that it would be like if you were connecting to someone, directly. And so they may say, whatever it is, I'm a really funny guy. I was a thrill seeker, just whatever the evidence is. And then sometimes there's a message going on. It's been a couple months since I did one, but I'm just,
Yeah.
but that's how it usually happens. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put this out there. The first time that I did that, I'm like, just trusting that if it's supposed to be for someone, it's supposed to be for someone
Mhm.
here. And yeah, it was just really magical. Just another way that spirit loves to blow our minds, I feel like, you
Yes.
know.
I
So
love that you said that. And how I would love to hear if you can think off the top of your head, or even
oh,
generally if you can't, of some of
well,
your
I'm
most.
looking at them right now. Some of
Oh,
them
I love that you
in my
thank you
office.
for
Oops,
showing
I have a
those.
water bottle. So I am trying to think about like some of the people. I do have a little bit of, I'm not sure if you're like that. I do tend to have a little bit of spirit amnesia
Yeah.
after I do a reading, and I feel like that's for a reason. But, of course, if somebody comes back to me, I will remember certain things.
Yeah.
Um, so here's some of them that I had post that I have up in my office. Um, I suppose one of them that was a little bit shocking was a guy that I did that I have read for. She's actually a student of mine. I didn't know what he looked like.
Mhm.
When we're doing mediumship, sometimes you only get like a snippet or something
Yeah.
of but so they're so blended with you, you're getting other information. Um, I drew him, and then some of the stuff seemed familiar. I was almost like, I wonder if this is for someone I know, but I didn't know who, or, but nothing was really connecting. And then after I like posted it, she was like, oh my God, that's, so and so. And I'm like, wow, now I know what he looks like. And then she showed me a
Yeah.
photo. So, and she didn't have anything posted, so there was no way that I
Yeah.
could like gone and like looked up, and she had never shared a photo with me of him before. So that was, I would say, one of those ones that was fun, in that
Yeah.
way.
I know. I think I get just as shocked as the sitter when something comes through that's really profound, like really
Yeah,
profoundly validating. I'm always like, are you kidding me? I get so excited
I know.
because there's just like, it's so, because I don't know, it's not like I doubt it, but then
Mhm.
sometimes
Yeah.
some readings are stronger than others. Some readings are
Mhm.
more mind blowing. Some are more general. Some I don't get as
Yeah.
much oomph behind
And
them. Yeah.
totally. And, someone recently asked me, at the retreat, well, how do you, I mean, and she's totally into it. So she wasn't like trying to like be
Yeah.
skeptic or anything, but she was just like, well, how do you know like that do you ever feel like maybe sometimes it's just all psychic?
Yeah.
And, I said, so there was sort of transition-y parts, and I'm sure you, probably have similar, evolution with your mediumship where, for a long time, and I feel like I just kind of came out of that. Like I just rarely have that voice that's like, hey, this is just all psychic. But that would come up, occasionally. I do, some reading, and while I'm reading, the little voice would be like, well, maybe this is just,
Yeah.
you're like, reading their mind or something, But then I don't know about you, it's almost like spirits, like their spirits always got your back. Then they throw down something that's so mind blowing, or it
Yeah.
has to be like, I just can't even express like what it is, or maybe it has to be checked upon. Maybe it's like something that comes later, or just something that's just so mind blowing that you're like, okay, yeah, it was,
Yeah.
um, uh, spirit. And, there's nothing wrong with psychic information as it
Mhm.
is. I
I
also
mean,
do
that's amazing in itself.
intuitive. That's where does that soul to soul? I mean, where's things coming from? Guides. Um, but in terms of telepathic, like just, you know what I'm saying? Like just like directly,
Yes.
like, oh, are you reading just what you want me to know, or something like that? Whatever that sort of
Right.
question is that comes up, I always have found that spirit just finds a way to blow our minds. So then I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
To show us that there's no way that you could know that sometimes. And I think
yeah,
I just interviewed someone who said, what about the times when you get some information and the person didn't even know it, which happens almost every reading. I
yes,
don't know. I'm sure that every reading you do almost, someone
yeah,
emails you after the fact and says, I just realized what this was. And I always tell them to do that because
yeah,
it helps me learn, it helps me
yeah,
grow. And it's also, okay, I was on the right track.
yeah.
So it's, if they didn't know it, how could you pick it up psychically?
It's perfect. Yes. And that's great why people have it recorded, or if they like to take notes. I recently had a guy, and sometimes guys can be very, you know, deadpan or something.
Yeah,
Not all guys.
totally.
There's definitely a lot that are,
Yeah.
but and I think it was just because it was one of his first readings, and yeah, afterward, like the day after, he sent me a bullet point, like, long one page of like all the things. He's like, I can't believe that I just didn't say yes, or I was sort of hesitant, or I said no, because every single thing you said makes sense, down to like I remember one specific thing was a roller skate that I was connecting to his grandma at one point after I'd connected some other people. And I was like, well, I'm getting this roller skate, and I'm seeing the roller skate going. And he's like, well, my sister liked to ice skate. And I'm like, I don't think so. It's not connected to your sister. So then, I always tell people, let's just put a pin in it.
Yeah, me
If you
too.
don't understand what it means, maybe it will make sense later, go ask something. His grandparents owned a roller skating
Oh,
company.
oh my God.
So it's like, well,
Wow.
I think so, but I'm not laughing at people either,
No, I
because
know.
you can, people who read for me, what I like to do is try to write down everybody's name that I think that I know that's in spirit, right?
Yeah.
Because there's even probably going to be a couple more that possibly could come through. Because what happens is sometimes, even if it is the person that we expect, like we forget details,
Hmm.
we can forget. I've had people forget their own person's name, we in a moment we can forget sometimes spirit comes through the way that they, feel like was the best time of their life.
Yeah.
Sometimes they, and then they kind of progress. There's so many things that can happen during a mediumship reading that I feel like that's why it's great to just be open. And like, if you don't know, maybe you just write it down or be like, I'm going to go ask about that later. Right.
Yep. I did a reading the other day and I was connected with this woman's grandmother. And I
Yeah.
said, she's showing me like a blue and white gingham apron, just like Dorothy's in The Wizard of Oz, that pattern. And
Yes.
she's like, don't know what it is. I said,
Yeah.
all right, put a pin in it. And then afterwards we were chatting and she said, well, I do actually have an apron that looks like that in my drawer. And I said, oh, you do? She's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, well, where'd you get it? She's like, I think my grandma made it. I was like,
Yep.
yeah, that's what it is.
That's
Like
right.
she was just like,
You know,
oh, okay. Like sometimes they'll say
yeah.
no, and that can actually kind of rattle me, I think sometimes where I'm like,
Yeah.
God, I'm just getting
Yeah.
this wrong. Maybe I'm not connected. Maybe I'm,
Yeah.
but sometimes it comes up later, and that's
Yeah.
always such a relief to me. I'm like, oh, I knew it. I
Yeah.
just knew it.
Yeah.
And
I know.
sometimes you just don't know. They don't know their family very well, or they didn't know a lot of
Yeah.
things about them.
Or they might be so stuck on one specific person and they really want that person. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, the way that I connect at the beginning is I just see who's here. Oftentimes it's a little bit like a family gathering. There's like several that are here and they're all sort of like, hey, I'm Dave, blah, 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 blah. And somebody else is interrupting them. And then it's like, okay, I just go with who's the loudest. So I kind of name who I feel is here. There's a younger male, there's a grandmothery figure, there's, like a father. And then I'm going to zone in on like one of them. Can one of you talk to me at a time? And I always tell people that please just allow that spirit to chat with us for a little bit and give us a little message, because otherwise I can be blocked sometimes if I'm going, because I'm going and then to talk about people that they're wondering if you're reading their minds. Well, if you want me to tell you everything that you already know and what you expect, then that's reading your mind. That's not following
Yes.
spirit, because spirit has a higher intelligence, has a higher like flow. And so if we follow that, it's really amazing. I mean, it could be someone who you hate, who you have a horrible relationship with. And what are they coming here to chat about? We don't have to talk for 10 minutes. We could maybe talk for 5 minutes, but there can be some profound healing and messages that come through if when people are open, I found.
Yeah, definitely. And do you always, people ask me this all the time.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the same for you. Do you always get messages while you're just living your life? Or do you have to intend? And for me, I always describe it as I change the channel. I intentionally
Yeah.
change the channel when I want to tune in.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone asked me that recently too at the retreat. And I said, hey, when I'm with you, I'm all yours. I'm totally,
Yeah.
I'm open and I jump all in. But when I'm not, I'm on a different plane. you know,
Yeah.
and I think spirit does that to one, protect us. We're not, or I sometimes that word's annoying because I feel like it's overused, but like to put us in our realm,
Yeah.
because we can't be constantly trying to discern between like all of this information. It's hard enough just living our daily life. I do feel like since, and I wonder if you feel this way, since developing that information makes more sense to me because I am an empath as well. And so I always, before developing, I like to say I was just way more scrambled and kind of my energy was all screwed up
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to I don't know what the word would be, but I didn't really know how to turn off. That would be the best.
Right.
But
And
yet
what
it
it,
wasn't clear because it was a lot of like people's um emotions here, then I'm getting other stuff and I couldn't figure out what was going on and I was just absorbing it all.
and what
Does
did
that
that look like or feel like to you?
It oftentimes felt like very high and very low. It felt like at its worst, depression.
Hmm.
And at its best, like I'm connected to everything, but I'm not grounded.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
now I feel way more, nothing's perfect because we're always learning, right? I would never say that, but I am definitely, when I'm not doing a reading, uh, I'm feeling more grounded and I'm feeling more present.
Yeah. And how did you, we talk about development because I don't know, I'm sure if you've watched my podcast or listened before, you know that my belief is that we're all mediums.
Yeah,
It's some people are more sensitive than others.
yeah,
Everyone, I've heard it said that it's kind of like anyone can learn to play piano, but not everybody's going to be Chopin, and that's
yeah,
the same of
yeah, yeah,
actually any profession,
yeah,
including
totally.
mediumship. But we can all learn this because we're all souls. So we
Yeah.
can all connect with where we came from. So when was it that you either developed an interest in it and began to study it, or did it come on and you were like, oh no, I'm a medium?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you on all of that, and I oftentimes say the same thing. Just to add a little bit more, I also feel like there needs to be kind of like an urge or sort of a nudge to go there. If someone said, "Hey, you can play basketball if you want to," I'd
Yeah.
be like, "Well, I'm a little short." And even if I had all the things of like why, I, I don't have any like desire
Yeah.
to do that. So I truly believe that even though I know everyone can connect to some degree in terms of how much they want to develop, how much, things like that, how much self-development they go through, I feel like some people just do not have the urge or
Yeah.
it's not their soul path in this lifetime. But for people who are interested, definitely like you are being nudged, right? And that's the best way that I can describe my path. There was just sort of pivotal points along my journey where spirit was really like, hello, knocking at my door, but I had a lot of fear around it as well. And I really wasn't in the best um like it's funny because people are like, well, you need to sort of self-development is it like a parallel with the mediumship, right? But yet don't get caught up in the thing about being perfect, to become a medium, because some people are sort of caught up in that. Well, I'm not healed enough,
Yeah.
mediumship development is very healing. But I do agree with the fact that, like, just for my own sake, I needed to sort of reel it in to a degree to be able to go into the my own development. So there was points where, in college, I was having a lot of out of body experiences. So like we would be doing critiques of our artwork and I was up on the ceiling. My energy went way up and I felt like I could see everything. And then when I came down, I felt it was probably just that fast, but when I came
Yeah.
down, I was so nauseous and out of it that the teacher, would be like, oh, like the teacher would tell me to go sit in the hallway, just take a breather, because I had so much anxiety around things that were sort of happening with my sensitivities. And I think that's really when it started to hype up.
Hmm.
And then I had a friend who passed around 26 or 27, who was my good friend in Iceland. I studied there for a year. She passed away, and she was the first spirit that I saw outside of my body that came to me. And I was actually painting when she came and gave me a message. And that was around, so I would say my first spirit that I remember seeing of, someone that I know was around 26, 27.
Yeah. Can you describe how you perceived her and how you heard the message?
Yeah. So like I said, I was just painting in my apartment and I don't know. I don't think I was really thinking of her at the time. I was sort of in my little flow thing, although I'm sure it was sad because I had, heard the news probably a few months ago. And she came and she just suddenly I just saw her sort of like holographic, which I feel is pretty rare because
It
there's
is rare.
only so
Yeah.
many times that you get that experience, right? And she kind of just came really quickly. And then I also saw in my mind's eye very well, also it was in our mind's eye, it's kind of difficult because it's in our mind's eye, but it was also in front of me. So it was,
Yeah.
I saw a train go by and she basically said, to the gist of, I know that you're sad, but I have to get on this train. And I was like, well, I want to come with you. And she's like, no, you can't get on this train. You need to go on that train. It's not your time yet, but I'll be around you and I'll, be with you. And, the one thing that I had forgotten about and that I remembered later was when I had last seen her before she passed, because I went back to Iceland and I saw her when she was pretty sick. She was talking about that she had previous to her cancer diagnosis, she had been getting into spirits. And
Oh,
she had been kind of like ghost hunting in Iceland with a medium. And at that point, I didn't really even know what she was talking about. I was like, oh, okay, like that's cool. Like, so there's people, and so I just find that interesting as well. Like, it's like, she was never like that. You know what I mean? She was like fun
yeah.
art girl, but she wasn't talking about spirit until, and this was before she knew about her diagnosis. And then, yeah, so it's just kind of interesting the way things go. So that was one pivotal point. So I don't know, there's a few other points along the way. There was a chance to kind of like develop with this psychic tarot guy that I had met. He shortly after, and I also had seen like a kind of a ghost alien person in my apartment. I know I sound like a total like wacky, it's just
Back
like,
in the day, I would
that's
have thought
the
you were
reality.
nuts. Now I'm like, I've seen it too. I totally know what you mean.
Totally. And it's
Yeah.
not something, I had a lot of sleep paralysis as well along the time, but that wasn't when I saw him. I had actually seen him go right through the bathroom wall, and he was extremely tall. I feel like spirit was like trying everything to get my attention. And I didn't know what that was. And when I had been sitting with him, and he's like, well, I should develop and things like, he's like, why don't you ask him, what he wants? He's probably there to help you. So then I had tried to connect during a dream, and I had this beautiful, awesome dream of him. He came to me in the dream, and he showed me all this like sequence. Did you ever see that movie like Requiem for a Dream?
Yes, I
Do you remember
barely
how it was
remember.
like kind of fast, like
Yes.
all the snippets, how they edited it? So it was basically like he showed me really hyper speeding fast how everything's connected, like the fish in the sea, the like land, the animals, the people, like blah blah blah, spirit. And then after all that, and he's like, see, we're all connected, it's all like energy and love. And then I saw this translucent kind of French doors down a hallway. And he was like, do you want to see what's on the other side? And I was like, sure. So we started walking down there. And then when I got to the handle, I was like, no. So,
Yeah.
I was still fighting. I was fighting with myself for a long time. So I feel like those were the big things. And then I just tried to ignore things for a while and kind of self-medicate and things like that for a good 5 years, had a baby, had a couple of babies, and then spirit was at me again. So, in the second big time, I just had no choice. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, I can give you examples, but
Can you give
I'm
me
so
one? Because
glad
I
it
love
listened.
I love the specifics.
Okay, good. I
I,
hope
I
I just feel like I'm like,
no, I knew you felt that way, but I
like
was like, I know that's what I want to hear, and I'm sure
yeah.
other people do too.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
So at that point, I was in California, and it was about maybe a year and a half before my dad passed. So my grandma was already in spirit, and I was waking up. I was painting still, right? So I was painting, and I would wake up in the middle of the night. I'd see like a spirit or a person in my dream, and then I'd get up. It'd be like 3 a.m. and I wanted to paint them. So that's when, I guess I said I never did that, but that's when I started to do that. But I didn't understand how to connect evidentially yet, though, just only like how to paint, and I didn't even know what I was seeing. It was like things were happening so fast. So I paint this person, and then I'd end up sort of like painting over it or adding some sort of like kind of psychedelic world around them or something else, because I just didn't have the connection with it all. So that's kind of how it started with the, second round here. And then I had a very prolific dream with my grandma in spirit, and she was like, hey, do you want to develop now or after you have a baby? either way, you're going to develop. She's very, and when she comes to people in classes and when she comes, she's very like right in your face, you know, like very like kind of stern. She's like, either way, you're going to do this, basically was her message. It might just take you a little longer if you have your second baby. So the day after, I was like, wow, okay, that was a pretty, intense dream. The day after, I saw an ad for I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Phillips. He's a
Yes.
yeah. So he was in San Jose, and I had never been to anything like that. I had seen like a few mediums like on TV or like, things, but I'd never been to like a group reading like that. So I was like, well, I think I'm supposed to go to this. So I just bought a ticket, went. I was sitting in the way back because it's funny because I had so much anxiety and fear, and now I just laugh at myself. But so I totally understand when people have that, because I was there in my own way, I
Yeah.
don't know if you did, but so I'm sitting back there like, okay, I don't know, maybe it was like the third or fourth connection he had was my grandma, down to the teeth. I mean, everything about her who I'd had the dream before, and the specific message for my mom, which was very healing, that like, and then I was like, okay, it's for me. I'm like standing up there, and he's like, and he looks at me and he's like, you do this for a living too?
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm like, no. He's like, well, they're saying that you're very intuitive. So I would encourage you to develop your intuitive abilities, maybe your mediumistic abilities. So that was pretty much the final kicker, where I was like, okay, enough has happened. And I'm just telling you sort of the big spotlights, but
Yes.
there's a lot in between of
Yeah. Did
things
you ever
like that.
tell Bill about that? Did you ever reach out to tell him?
No, I
Yeah.
didn't. I know. Yeah, it'd be
And
fun
I
if
don't
I ever, yeah.
I know. I think he'd get a kick out of that. I don't know him personally, but I follow him. And I think he'd love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it was I didn't have all those profound like I see spirit. It was more of I was just obsessed with mediumship and
Yeah.
would
Well,
watch all the shows.
yeah.
And then one day found out that anyone can learn because I was reading John
Yes.
Holland's book and
I love John
I
Holland.
love John Holland. I read Suzanne Gieseman's book is
Yes.
amazing as well. And
Yeah.
all of these books and the Long Island Mediums book. And they all said, the
She's,
Long Island Medium said, do you think I was born like this? She said, no, I wasn't. I listened to the audiobook. She's like,
yeah.
I wasn't born like this. She's like, I studied. And she said that even
Yeah.
after she studied, her teacher was like, you're ready now. And she was like, no, I'm not. And she didn't think
Yeah.
she was ready or good enough. She had some experiences as a kid, but it wasn't
Okay.
like she didn't say that she saw spirit all the time or
Yeah.
knew what to do with it.
Right.
And it's now it all comes together, as you said. Now I can look back and say, oh, I was visited by an interdimensional being, which
Um,
took me years to be like, what was that? Like, and now I understand that
Great.
it's all the same. Because I was
Yeah.
like, that was definitely wasn't a spirit. It was like tangible. I could see it so clearly. And it was
Yeah.
like a big blue orb that
Mm,
was a glowing light. And I was only like 14.
that's
I
so
wasn't
cool.
spiritual. I was probably an atheist at that time.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
didn't know what it was. So and it was so long ago. It was in the 80s. We didn't have any kind of technology that would have made that happen. And for years, I Googled what could it have been? Like, what
Yeah.
was that?
What
And I
is it?
never really came up with anything until recently where I was like, oh, it was an extraterrestrial.
Yeah. Was it
Like,
like
that's
blue avians, or was it? I
I
only know so
think
many
so.
of
I
them,
think it
but
was like a
yeah.
wait, is it an Arcturian? The ones that are
Yeah. Yeah.
it
So,
might be that.
so what's interesting too,
Mm,
is when I look at some of my last artworks that I made, like series, when I was
yeah,
still like showing my art, they're all blue people. They're all like blue, like they look like they have like little blue dot. I'm gonna send it to you. They're
please
very like
do.
almost skeletal, but then they also look sort of alien with all these blue. And it's so funny because I just didn't have any. For me, people ask me, well, why, don't you miss making art, or like, don't you want to like be an artist, or like, so I'm like, if I want to make art, I will, but I
Yeah.
absolutely have no desire to make art anymore, because I feel like when there was always something pushing me and pushing me and pushing me with my art, that I never felt satisfied. And I know the reasons why I didn't feel satisfied was because even though the flow is incredibly satisfying, like the channeling, um, I always wanted to Like when I put something out there, I didn't, I mean, of course, there's a certain recognition because you work on your craft, but it wasn't always about like, hey, Nicole can make this like super cool thing. It was like, I wanted to connect with people. Like, what is
Yeah.
this? You know? And I just felt like, yeah, you'd get some people, or maybe, you know, but oftentimes you don't hear if they buy it or if they come to the show, you don't have that conversation, you know, or and what I love about mediumship and psychic intuitive readings and connections is you have those, that's exactly what you're in. And it is, don't you feel like it is very creative? I mean, it is,
Yes.
it's,
I
yeah.
live for it. I live for the connection of it. I love sitting with somebody that starts out as a stranger and immediately becomes someone that you're bonded with for life because
Yes.
you are
Yeah.
in this most intimate connection with this person. So from that point on, I mean, I keep in touch. At some point, I'm probably going to have trouble keeping in touch with everybody,
Yeah.
but it's like I always tell them, text me, tell me how it worked
Yeah.
out, or like if you have any questions, because I
I love
want,
it.
it's just like being able to, first of all, hold space for people in grief is such an
Yeah.
honor. And
Yes.
sometimes they're not in grief, they're just
Yeah.
curious, or sometimes they've healed a lot, but they just wanna
Yep.
hear from someone. And
Totally.
so, like you, I was and am a voice actor, but it was and I was doing really well and I loved it, and then I developed a vocal disorder, so I couldn't do it for a while, which is why I switched into well, I just didn't switch, I just started
Yeah.
studying f as a hobby. I didn't know that I could actually do this as a for a living. I did not ever think I would be s talented
Right.
enough to do it the way that I do now. And so, but yes, I was like, you know what? I realized that I still love acting and I'm good at it, but this is my
Yeah.
purpose.
Do you have like a desire? Like, do you like, are you like, oh, I got to get back to like acting or anything like that?
No,
Or,
because well, I still do it, but it's
oh, you
like
do. Okay.
I still do it, but it just
Yeah.
isn't like I don't know. It's also an industry thing where I used to make so much. I used to like make six figures doing it, and it was like full
Oh,
time. And now
yeah.
it's just everyone I know is struggling. So it's kind of like not so much there, but because of all that, and because of the strife involved, and because
Yeah.
of healing from a
Like, do
vocal
you feel
disorder,
like it's as satisfying? Like if
no.
you could, you know, and
If I
obviously
had
we
to
only do
choose,
so much mediumship readings in a day because
yes,
it's using a lot of energy. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm doing, you know, 12 mediumship readings today.
right,
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like you can't, and that's why like teaching and doing intuitive thing
yeah,
readings and you know, doing something else. But like I just mean like kind of I just wonder, to me, it just doesn't even give me the same hits of
yep,
like whatever it is, dopamine or like spirit is what I mean, you just
yeah,
you can't explain that until I feel like you've really experienced a certain amount, you know, and like it was really
yep,
cool that one of my students who's been in circle for a few times now, she was explaining to some of the new people yesterday. She's like, you just don't even understand the like the what was she saying? Like the energy that spirit, the love energy that spirit gives through you is just amazing. And once you experience it, it's like you can't unexperience it. I don't
yeah,
know.
yep. I agree, and I'm passionate about doing mediumship work, and I still love acting, and it's just that it's sort of tainted with all this other
Yeah,
stress,
I
like, it's
totally
become
understand.
kind of a source of
Yeah.
stress, whereas this is, like, pure love and such
Yes.
a gift to be able to do, and isn't it a gift
Yeah.
too to be able to do it for people you love? It's and I'd love to hear you speak on that too,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes it can be hard to read people you know because you know so much about them that you're not
Yes.
sure if you're making it up or not because you have too much
Right.
information.
Mhm.
However, I have been able to, in short bursts, like one of my best friends lost her baby at 5 days
Oh,
old recently, and that's just
yeah.
been
Wow.
so, so hard and sad for all of us,
Yes.
especially her and her husband, obviously. But
Yeah.
I just was like, I don't know if I can do it, but I asked her baby, I said, show me something. And her
Yeah.
baby showed me a big ladybug right off the bat. And then she showed me her sister, her older
Yeah.
sister. And I just said, okay, she showed me a ladybug. And she
Yeah.
said, I know what that is. She said, my mom was just saying, I think that the baby is with my mother in spirit. And she said, her mother used to always sew ladybugs on everything. It was
Oh,
like her whole thing.
awesome. See, that's the
And it was
thing.
like
I did so much.
confirmation and it came in
Yes.
so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm like, she's showing me her sister and said, I'm in every breath. I'm in every, she said, I'm living through her. I'm in every
Yeah.
breath. And it was
Oh,
the she needed
wow.
to show me the ladybug because I could have made up
Yes.
the part about her
Right.
sister.
But that's
Like,
what I mean. They'll always put something
yes.
else in there, right?
Yeah. So
So you know that
sometimes you
you're just,
can.
yeah.
And what she said is she's like, "I'm so grateful that I have you as a friend, especially during
Oh,
this time." And so
yes,
it can be so rewarding to even
that
just help
is
a friend out. Like another friend of mine was like,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, like this other friend was like, "My baby's looking at somebody and I don't know who it is." And I said, "I don't
Oh,
know if I can read you or not because I know you." But I just turned to her and I said, and I don't know her like as well as I know other friends, but I just said,
right.
"Randall?" And she goes, "Holy shit." She goes, "That's my uncle Randall." And I
Yeah.
was, or Randy, whatever. And I was
Yes.
like, okay. He was just saying that he was there. So
I
to
love
what,
it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you think about, can you read for
Yeah.
yourself or people you know?
So I feel like it's more, there's two things with it is yes, I feel like we can totally read for people that we know, but there's two different things is like, are you going to be a people pleaser or are you going to
Yes.
be who you are when you don't know someone or you don't know them that well, right? Are you, because sometimes with people, like, let's just say like, yeah, there's definitely like friends, certain kind of like variety of friends where, and when I've read for them, like when I've read for someone, I just have to say, now I'm in reading mode. I'm going to pretend like I don't know you. And if there's things that comes through that you already know that maybe I would have known, then that's going to be part of it because I know you to a degree, but there's going to be other things that come through as well. And I'm just going to go into that realm. There's definitely some people where I just don't know if I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
because I don't know if I can't not say like, well, it's not like, of course you need to edit out, but I know spirit knows me to a degree where I'm not gonna give, scary or like,
Yeah.
super negative stuff. But, part of it is there's stuff that might come up that is uncomfortable or things that people are dealing with, things that have happened. And you know, it's just sort of like, do you want to go in that boundary or not?
Yeah.
That part. And are they open to it of what comes through? But like, say for even my husband, so he's Swedish, and we were in the car once and I can't remember he was like, oh, I said, oh yeah, I think like so-and-so's. And I got some Swedish names of like a grandpa, great grandpa or something. I was like, is that even anyone? What is that name? And he was like, yeah, and it was a while ago. So I'm forgetting if it was his great grandpa or somebody that
Yeah.
I obviously didn't know of their name. And then certain memory that was coming through with it. And he was just in a very like fluid, we were just in a very flowy like mood. But yeah, I think that's part of it is, and it's also dealing with, is the person open? And then sometimes I do feel like we get censored. I get censored. It could seem like a block, but I actually do believe, like, say with like one of my best friends, she kind of is always like running things by me. And like sometimes I'm like, I'm getting censored on that because I'm not supposed to know. It's like
Right.
psychic intuitive information. Whereas like there's a certain amount that can come through. And then it's just like with our own self. Like I don't know
Yeah.
everything that's going to happen. I mean, so why would I know every single thing that's going to happen to you? It's like, part of this is your journey. And like,
Mhm.
yeah, we get intuitive hits and we get, we're probably more connected than if we weren't developed through dreams, through other, through meditation, stuff like that. But it's like, we are here living the lesson as well. So do you ever feel like you, with certain, like into more intuitive psychic stuff, that you're sort of like censored or like
Yeah.
blocked from
I
stuff
think
when
so. Like
people?
my friend who lost her baby is like, am I going to have another baby? And I'm like, I mean, I feel yes, but I
Yes.
can't, I feel like I'm not being told
Yeah,
yes. Like
you're
I
not
said,
getting like a real specific. So
no.
it's hard to discern because when the like, the vibration when, when you're reading for someone, and say if it's for someone you don't know, or even for someone, the mediumship vibration, and like just say that roller skate that came through. It's like, I know that's something,
Yeah.
but but if something came through and you don't know, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not sure. I'm probably getting censored or blocked. So it's more like your own personal relationship with spirit, right? And keeping
Yeah.
that like super clear. Again, not, it's easier to go into people's stuff when you know stuff about them. It's sort of like therapists, right? They have to go to other therapists, or they, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not gonna probably be a full-on therapist for their, dad or their mother. Like,
Right. And also I have a stake in this because I want it for her. So it's hard for me to be
right.
objective. Like,
Totally.
am I saying yes
Yes.
because I know that she really wants that so badly and that it would help in the healing process, or am I actually getting a hit? And I'm like, I feel yes very strongly, but I don't feel comfortable saying how many or like what
Yes.
the gender is or anything like that because I just don't. I think I'm being blocked because it's sort of a path she has to walk herself
Right.
and kind of go
Right.
through 'cause all I knew is I was like, I think it might be hard.
Yeah.
It might be difficult at first, and it's going to seem like it's not going that way. And then it will, but who
Yeah.
knows? We'll have to see. Um,
And that's
yeah.
really all we can do with people, even
Yeah.
people we don't know. It's like we're not going to get everything. We're only going to get whatever spirit wants us, like little, like here, like little, like sprinkles of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like we're not allowed to just like, okay, like do the rest of your life. I mean,
I would
we
love to be able to do that, but
might,
it would
yeah,
also not be fun because then everyone it would
yeah,
be
and they might not listen to you. I mean, you know what I
right.
mean? They might just be like, no, like, I'm not gonna, I mean, I'm sure you've had people who are, things come through. It's so funny too. Something will come through if they're asking more on the intuitive, psychic thing. And there's like, oh, okay, just say like, oh, I feel like you're gonna have your own business, or they're showing me you're being more independent. Oh, I'd never have my own business. And it's like, okay,
Right.
why are you here? Are you here
Right.
for, I always say visions? Are you here for like the visionary, like the big, hits, and just be open to it? Do you want me to tell you exactly what's already in your mind? And obviously you're here because that's not working. Because you're blocked.
Yes.
You're asking because you want the bigger picture, because it's helpful for us all to see that. But I always think it's funny when people are like, I mean, obviously within realm, if somebody was like, hey, you're going to be a deep sea shark diver, I might be like,
It was not even on my radar.
yeah. But if it's sort of, do you know what I'm saying? Something that's like more creative, or like something, I just think I always sort of, I'm like, okay, well, like there's things that are in our soul path, and there's programs from our own mind that, like, we have to kind of shed to sort of get to other parts of our soul path. And all we can sort of do sometimes is plant that seed if it comes through, right?
Exactly. In fact, I had a client that never paid me. And I was like, I'm
Oh,
gonna let it go. But usually
I
I
hope they're
charge in
watching
advance.
right now.
I know, right? Usually I
Pay her.
charge in advance,
Wait.
but
Oh, learning that.
but this time it was like through a friend, and I was like, let's just see how it
Mhm.
goes. Like, whatever, you can get me
Yeah.
later. And and I just kind of always wondered what happened there, but I reached out. I didn't want to put my friend in the middle who'd referred the guy. But I was just curious. So recently I
Yeah.
asked her, I was like, I know he seemed like a really nice guy, and I don't think he was trying to
Yeah.
stiff me or anything. But she said, oh, yeah, he said that, the reading just didn't resonate and that everything was off. And I was like, that's fine. Like, putting this out there, if anyone, like, I don't want anyone to pay for something where they didn't get value out of it. So putting that out there that, if it's off, don't be afraid to tell me,
Yes.
but it's funny because what he had asked me was, he said, I'm about to make a big business deal. I need to know, yes or no, do I pair up with this guy? Like, do I collaborate with this guy or not?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
I was like,
Okay.
well, we'll see. And I said, well, the person who comes through is this young guy who's in his 40s. He's your business mentor or colleague. And he's like, yeah. And I described him. He's
Yeah.
like, I said, he's very like
And he was
confident.
saying yes. Did he know who this person is?
He knew who the person was.
Okay.
And I was like, but he wanted to connect with his dad, which is interesting. And I couldn't, which now I understand I couldn't, but I was trying. And therefore I
Yeah.
was just off. Well, what the guy basically said was, you know how I'm the guy that just runs on instinct and you're always the guy who's overthinking everything? He was like, I'm not going to tell you yes or no, or wouldn't tell me. He said, you have to be more like me. You got to trust yourself more. What do you feel in your gut? Like, and then the guy goes, well, I got to get off the phone because I'm getting on that call now to decide. And I was like, wait, literally you left like no time to make the decision, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately he wanted to hear yes or no. And
Right.
the spirit wasn't giving me that. The spirit was saying, remember how I was always like confident and I just like trusted my gut. And you tend to like break things down and be over
Yeah.
logical. And he was basically encouraging him on his path. start to trust your gut more. You don't need to
Yeah.
ask Shannon whether it's a yes or no. You already
That's
know the answer.
yeah.
That wasn't what he wanted to
And
hear.
that's part of the thing too, is oftentimes when people ask a question, it's like, yeah, you might initially get that gut, like yes or no,
Yeah.
but there's so much more spirit wants to talk about with that. It's like,
Yeah.
that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's why when people are like, do you do one question, whatever they're called, like one
Oh,
question?
yeah.
I'm like, no, I don't, because that's like asking me, and I'm like, you can go to the bot psychics and you can go to the like 99-cent dollar psychics for that stuff, because that's not, spirit wants to talk about the layers of like why and like other magical stuff that's coming through. And then like, okay, so that it can empower you to, make your own decision with that. If you also intuitively feel no or yes, right? But
Yeah.
you were receiving, it sounds like, all this, the context and all the stuff that's going to help empower him. He was being super pushy. And, I don't know, I have a 10-minute rule where it's like, okay, if I don't connect, or you don't feel like I'm connecting with people in spirit, or if we're doing intuitive psychic
Yeah.
within 10 minutes, or I don't feel like I am, or there's something going on, then I will refund you with,
Yep.
during that 10-minute time frame. After that, no free refunds,
Right.
because I've had a situation similar, and it was at a psychic fair, because I started at psychic fairs to and it was like 15 minutes or whatever I was doing. And the woman was nodding to everything. Oh yeah, yes, yes. So her whole body language was saying,
Yeah.
and she was verbally saying yes to whatever we were even talking about. And then at the end, I was like, okay, well, the time's up. And I was like, well, hopefully that was helpful for you. And she was like, no, actually it wasn't. I was so thrown, because it was so opposite. It's one thing if someone's just deadpan, or they're kind of
Yeah.
giving you like visual, or they're very shut off. But I'm like, you said yes to everything.
Yeah.
So I was, young into the development, and I was all
Yeah.
like, oh. So I refunded her, and I was like, next time, could you please like let me know, during the thing.
Right.
But somebody like a more of a veteran, psychic that was near me, she was like, oh, she probably does that to everyone just to like
Right.
get money, So
Yeah.
it's like, people are always like, oh, psychics, they're going to scam you. And it's like, no, people scam us.
It's so true,
We,
because if you tell me that did not resonate and I didn't have a good experience, I mean, I don't like to lead with that, because you don't want people to then
yes,
just go, well, just say I didn't like it. But
yeah.
most people I trust, and I'm
Yeah.
like, if you're that person, I don't, it's fine. I don't want your money,
Oh.
but I
And
think,
lesson learned, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Lesson learned. And I'm not saying everybody's scam, but I just mean like there is that other side. Of course, there's always going to be there's kind of bad apples in whatever profession. I mean,
yeah,
teachers, police, I mean, you name it, there's a bad apple in there, right?
yeah,
So there's also going to be probably here and there, maybe a psychic or a medium who you can tell they're not authentic. But how many are, right? There's a
right.
lot that are, and the whole thing is to help people. And I feel like it's a lot harder, because the whole process is so transparent, and so, compared to like making a painting,
Yeah,
I'm going to redo that, and I'm going to redo it behind the scenes. And then I'm going to put it out when I feel like it's done, or even something for work where you're working on it, by yourself, and then you're going to like present it, right? This is all, the whole process is all out there, every little thing. Right. And so that's what I tell people too in classes. It's like, you're not going to be able to just like, it's okay to watch for a while, but after that, you're going to have to speak it. The errors are going to have to, the mess is happening out in the open.
yeah,
That's the thing, right? And then you get, better at discerning as, as you move along. But I know I kind of went off on a different tangent, but
yeah.
just, what do
And
you
what
think
do
about that?
well, yeah, I just had something, and then I was
Oh,
that
I
it
ran
brought
over
to
it.
mind, and no, you didn't. I just forgot what it was, but I would like to ask you, with that in mind, because I notice what I've learned lately from you, lady, is that I've been quoting you
Oh,
and to my clients
yeah.
regularly,
Awesome.
because I always start, and I was going to ask you, it's
Yeah.
leading to a question for you, but I
Okay.
start my readings by giving the spiel,
Yes.
and I always say, like the Long Island medium says, I'm just doing this. You probably already know all this, but just in case, I'm just letting spirit know I'm ready to work, and also connecting with you. And also, as I'm talking, sometimes I get better information when I'm not focusing on getting information. If I'm
Yeah.
just talking, suddenly stuff starts to come in if I'm not thinking. So I'll
Right.
just talk.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, sometimes the first 10 minutes for me is a little rocky because I'm getting on a
Yeah.
bicycle and I'm kind of like fall. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't do the 10-minute rule, because I might not even really get in there for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
because I'm kind of still getting my bearings and I'm like, I'm on this wobbly bike. Okay, I'm a
Yeah.
little,
Yeah.
now I've got the balance.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I said to them is, look, sometimes don't be afraid to say no to me, because
Yeah. Yeah.
either you don't know the information, or it'll come up late. You'll remember it later. I may be
Yeah.
misinterpreting. I also could just be dead wrong. Pardon the pun.
Yes.
Like, I
Yeah.
could just be
Mhm.
wrong, because
Yep.
sometimes my own thoughts do come in and I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
really sure if that's
Yeah.
them or me, and I'm just going to say it. So and I also say, spirit, I don't get to choose who comes through, in what order they come through, or what they say to me. What they
Yeah.
say is in your highest and best good. And I said, another
Yeah.
medium recently posted on Instagram, yes, we work for the client because they're paying us and we care about them. And
Sure.
we love the connection and we want to help them heal. But we are not working for the client. We are working for spirit.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we are working for spirit. So spirit,
Yeah.
you call the shots here.
Yes.
So I don't always get.
Spirit is my boss.
Yes, spirit is
Yeah.
my bosses. I guess
Yeah.
the spirit's my employer. So I'd love to hear you maybe talk about
Right.
that,
And
or
it's,
yeah.
and of course it is a bit of, there's a lot of battles going on, because there's the battle with your own mind. And I will even tell people sometime, I'm like, I'm fighting with myself. Like,
Oh, good. That's
see,
what I need to say.
yeah, I can't, there was like a woman, I can't remember what it was, the specifics of what it was about, but this happens probably once, at least one time, maybe more, in readings where like suddenly I'm like, "Ugh," and then they're staring at me. I'm like, oh, I'm just
Yes.
fighting with myself right now. So see,
Yeah.
even I'm fighting, I'm going to tell you what I'm getting, but and then it's almost 99% of the time, it is correct. It is what it is.
Yes.
But it's like, for some reason, so I'm just, we also have our own, we're also like battling with ourselves, because our rational mind is like, oh, it couldn't be a blueberry. Why is it a blueberry? I'm just,
Yes.
I do, because I can't
Yeah.
remember the specifics of things sometimes, but like, and you're thinking, or I already know that she's doing this. So like, why am I supposed to like, talk about this thing? Oh, and even recently there was, at the last woman I did at the retreat, I think I was connecting to her, was her father-in-law at that point. Otherwise it was her mom. But, we had already established that she had a sister in the physical. Okay. The client, but then later in the connection, blah, 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 I was connecting with people in spirit, and then sister. So then my mind was like, oh, she has her sister's in
Yeah.
the physical, and so but luckily enough, I was speaking it out loud.
Mm.
So I was like, well, I don't know, I'm hearing sister again, but because you already told me that you have a sister in the physical, but they're saying sister again, and they're being really adamant about it. And she's like, I have a sister in spirit as well.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of those things where it's like, that's one of the things that we're kind of personally fighting with
All
during,
the time.
because, mediumship is not an exact science. It's not like, here's the recipe, we're going to bake this cake and you just follow the instructions. You know what I mean? It's so different for every single person. We're constantly changing within the way
Yeah.
that we communicate with spirit. And even though we're like, hey, spirit's my boss, there's also a new person in front of us every single time. And that even though we don't want to go into your energy very much, or people please, there's also like just the professionalism, just the wanting to have a healing experience, and wanting to do a good job. And
Yes.
that's very difficult to, we're working through all those energies, right? So
I love hearing you say that. And when I do these interviews with mediums, my hope, sometimes, people are here for the near death experiences, and a lot of people also love these, but I like these because I know a lot of mediums can use what we're talking about for their own sort of benefit and training and understanding the process, because it really helps me to hear you say that, because, oh my
yeah,
God, I'm confident now in my abilities, but then I've had
yeah,
some readings this week that I was like, I did get some very specific stuff that
mhm,
I know, I mean, that
yeah,
proved to them that I was, in there, but I also got a lot of stuff that wasn't resonating. And then I start to get in my head about it and go, am I just, then I stop trusting what's coming in. And I start going, what if everything, okay, that was, they gotta know, gotta know, gotta know. Am I just spitting stuff out now? Am I even there?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's because I'm forcing it too much. Like they say at the end, I
Mhm.
always ask, is there anyone that we didn't connect with that you wanted to? And I'll
Yeah.
try. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
sometimes I'll be like, okay, I get their name and I got how they passed, and then I have nothing. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
that's it. I don't have a message. I don't know really where to
Yeah.
go from there. I
Yeah.
just know they're here.
Yeah.
And then I start to sort of, get
Yeah.
into my headspace.
In your headspace. And so there's something that kind of happened to me, and I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm forever have shifted, but I definitely felt a
Yeah.
shift. But when because I still will sometimes go into those old, something throws me off
Yeah.
or whatever. But when you kind of go through like a bigger sort of shift in the way that you kind of do the reading, sort of like the thing where it was like I kept having that little voice, like, well, maybe this is just all psychic, and then there would be always something that would come in, and then that voice finally went away for the most part. Maybe every once in a while it will come back, but like I've been telling people this, I don't know the exact date, probably in the last year, maybe 6 months to a year, I've felt a shift in the way that I'm doing my readings, where of course you're still mental, because
Yeah.
you're translating, you're a translator basically for all this energy and things that are in spirit coming through, but it went from dropped into my heart more, a
Uh-huh.
lot more. And so when I'm trying to explain it, I've been trying to explain it. So it's almost like I'm operating, I feel like, from
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
I feel like even if there's things that are like they don't understand, or like, oh, okay, well, I must not be with that person, I must be with this person, or if something's going on and I'm like, okay, put a pin in it, my energy feels like I'm just more open and dropped into my heart. So I'm less in my head.
Yeah.
And I feel like only other mediums understand what I'm talking about. So it's hard to even explain
It's
that.
actually
But
almost the way I perceive it is putting the focus, literally putting the focus in your heart space. Just like
yes,
when you're putting your focus in, I'm switching into the spirit realm now. It's a
yes.
very subtle shift, but it is sometimes you just have to envision that.
And I think it started when there was points where I was like, I'm not enjoying this, or like something would happen where I just felt drained, or I'm like, even though you're gonna keep doing, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
everybody's job or whatever you're doing, you always have like things that come up, and I was like, okay, well, what if you just like approach it from like having more fun, or like, or just,
Yeah.
try to just, and something started to shift when and then I realized I was going into my heart space more. And that's the best that I can describe it. I wish I could give,
I
but
love that because I have a reading in a little while and I'm like, I'm going to just envision that. And I bet you it'll make a difference. Sometimes someone just says one little tweak, like one
yeah,
little thing where it's
and
like
it
when I start
helps.
to get into, oh my God, am I guessing? Am I making this up?
Yeah.
Then just kind of no, back to heart space. And also I got the word trust tattooed on my wrist
I love it. Chill.
specifically
Yes.
for mediumship because
Yeah.
mediumship is one big free fall, trust
It is.
fall.
I always tell people it's basically like, I don't care if you've been doing this
Yeah.
for your first time or you've been doing this for 100 years. Every single time it's going to feel like you're jumping off a cliff.
Yes, I say that too.
It's just like, I mean, are we just adrenaline junkies or
Yeah, I
something?
know.
Because
Every
it does,
time.
it is. It's like you don't know, even if you know that person, you're still expanding to, like you said, like even for a friend or something like that, you're still opening up and expanding. So spirit will show you information that you don't know, or messages, right? So, but it does feel like that. It is like the trust level. It's like, do you
Yeah.
trust that you can jump off of this cliff right now and fly?
Yes. And I'm finally at the place where I don't get totally nervous beforehand and go, what if I can't do this? Now I
Yeah.
go, look, spirit's going to show up for me. Now there have been a few times where they couldn't, and I've kind of
Yep.
pieced together and that's I just want to talk about that real quick too, is
Yep.
that I've also learned that there have been a few times. Unfortunately, I feel like in
Yeah.
every case, I wasn't charging the person. It was like a friend or something or
Oh,
someone. I
interesting.
was like,
Yeah.
but it
The
was like,
energy maybe was not quite, yeah.
yeah. And I realized there's several factors in that. Like, and I want to hear your experience too.
Yeah.
This woman I read, she's a high school friend, and her father had just recently passed.
Okay.
And now I find that it doesn't always. I mean, someone
Yeah.
could pass and you can get messages right that minute, but I find that sometimes it is hard if the person has been gone not as long, and she wasn't
Okay.
like she's
Yes.
in grief, but she wasn't
Right.
hysterical or
Yeah. It wasn't like
emotional.
where you couldn't read for her. No, no.
Right.
I'm going to ask you, do you feel like in the back of your mind that you needed to prove something or your
I think so.
ability because they were connected somehow
Probably.
to you?
Probably.
And I still have that voice every once in a while, and I have to just like totally drop it. I'm just like, if it's somebody that I know, I
Then
do feel that extra like pressure. And I
I
used to
do
not
too.
even read anyone. I'm like, I'm sorry if I know you, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna read you. But now I'm at the point where I'm just like, hey, this is what it is. And like, um, but I do still feel sometimes I do suddenly just get super nervous or weird right before a reading. And I'm not going to say always it's the other person's energy, but I'm
Yeah.
going to say a lot of the time you're like, oh, they have just verbalized that they're very nervous, or maybe they are feeling quite down, or something's weird, with something that happened, and
Yes.
you're already getting that in your body, and then, or maybe you're just excited, like before, if I do some small groups or like
Yeah.
families, like, I don't know about you, but it feels like I've had like 3
Yeah.
shots of espresso.
Yes.
And it's just like, wow. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's spirit. They're like jumping on you, and it can almost be internalized as like extreme anxiety. But what it is, I mean, there might be a little anxiousness in there because you're going to be with more people, or something's different than you normally do. But I mean, it's just spirit energy.
That's something I've learned too, is when I feel extra nervous beforehand, I actually say, don't think of it as I'm so nervous. Think of it as, okay, there's some anxiety around this spirit. There's some
Yeah.
anxiety around the situation, or maybe it's the person. And it almost always is. It's almost, I'm getting, and I'll just say right off the bat, I'm feeling like really anxious, like
Yes.
really
Yeah.
short of breath. I'm really nervous. I mean, my body does this, like, what does this mean? Why would that be? Like, is there a reason
And
why? Yeah.
yes. And one last thing too that I wanted to mention too is that you can't connect with spirit and be in mediumship connection or intuitive psychic and having a huge ego. I'm not
Right.
saying you can't have a huge ego outside. Maybe so you turn it down, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
something like that. But don't you agree? When you're connecting, you're in a open state, and like I said, you're also like trying to translate all those things. So sometimes we can kind of like, um, that critic or whatever can like come in at the same time, but you can't just be like, oh yeah, ba 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 ba, like ba ba ba, I got, what I mean. You can
Yeah.
come from an open heart space, but it forces you to um be in this vulnerable space, so that it is unlike a lot of professions.
Yeah.
Maybe people who are um, athletes or doing something that's within themselves, like downhill skier, or like a piano player, someone who is really has to be also in that open flow,
Yeah.
um, but not just like, hey, I'm making your cup of coffee, or like I'm going into a meeting and I'm gonna like bring my swagger. Like I just there you can't, do you agree with me? Do you kind of know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't express insecurity, but I think it's important to be humble, and also, yeah, I mean, you
I
have to
never
be
say like
con
spirit will slap you the second you think,
Yes,
like, oh yeah. I
right.
mean, you'll get a little happy note if you get something, but if you come with like, oh yeah, it's gonna be, just gonna like it, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, good luck, because that means you're not in your open channel, you're in your
In your
human
ego.
self, or
Yeah,
ego,
and you do have to be confident, and that's why I put trust on my wrist to be like, just know that you're right. Like,
Yep.
one of my friends, Shannon Rock, is a medium, and she's amazing, and she always says, "Just you're right. Just know that you're right." Not like to the exclusion of No,
No.
I'm right. See, that's what I never liked about Sylvia Brown back in the day is that and I always and I know people love her and I know that she's legit now, but
Yeah.
I used to see her on Montel and I didn't like the style where people would say that doesn't resonate. She'd go, "No, honey, it's right. Uh-huh, it's right." And she would just
Right.
always say that like, you're
Well,
gonna yeah, you're gonna get your PhD. No, 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 you are. And your
wow.
grandmother's here. Oh, my grandmother's on alive. Well, no, she's dead. Like it was sort of like she had this abrasive way. It's just very New
Yeah.
York. And I know now that she actually had real gifts, but it was just
Yeah.
I never
Wow, I
liked
would
that.
never I mean, our style is more like we'll put a pin in it or
Yeah.
if something comes up, like sometimes in a reading, something will come up like 3, 4 times in my mind. I'm like, okay, this is the third time that this has come up.
Yes.
So I'm gonna, you know what I mean? And like I have to tell you that. But I just meant like part of the kind of nervousness or our own personal journey it is, you know, being in a complete letting go state.
Yeah.
And that's that flying thing. And it's more like how to navigate when you're in it. Um, and I talk about like flow state in my workshops and in class. And it's sort of like when you're in the flow state, you're in the flow state. And like the second you come out of it, you're like, oh, you know, but you want to get back in it.
Yeah.
But it's almost like if you can identify with more with that, then it, you know, it will be it's helpful to just stay in the flow state without it bumping out of you and being like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure about that? You know, that
Yeah,
voice.
that's exactly true. And I think one of the things I just taught a workshop too, and I tell people this and then sometimes I forget it. It's
Yeah.
really when you're in that flow state, you know how like
Yeah.
there's that moment where you're like, I don't know. I always feel like it's when I'm looking up. I just like look up
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I'm just getting it. And I'm like, okay, we're on
Yeah.
this is flowing. And I can feel that it's happening so fast. I'm not stopping to think. So I
Yes.
said in my workshop, it's the first thing that comes in. It drops in. Spirit
Yeah.
moves so fast
Yes. They move
that they're
fast.
gonna that you
Yeah.
gotta grab it. And sometimes I
Mhm.
forget that and I'll start to think because I'll be like, I'm not getting anything. Shit, I'm not getting anything. Okay,
Yeah.
give me something. But really, if I switch my awareness, it's like you are getting something. Just grab it. Don't hesitate.
Right.
Don't stop to
Right.
think. And that
Yeah.
can be challenging and that requires a huge leap of faith.
It does, and I love that. I feel like that's such a great, you know, just great point. And it's one of those things where, um, you know, the reason why we can teach is because we've been going through all these things,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's like we have been walking the walk. We still walk the walk. We're still like, wait, shit, why am I going and why am I second guessing and going into their thing, or why am I doing that? You know what I mean? So it still comes up. It's still but now we have a lot more skills and tools in our tool bag to, oh yeah, I know this, you know, to kind
Yeah.
of get back in, things like
Yeah.
that.
And then I just remember, stop thinking, just talk, just go,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
let it come in. Well, I thank you for this awesome discussion, and I hope it'll help a lot of people in their own development. But I would love for you to share where we can reach you. You are Nicole
Yes.
Intuitive Medium, all
Correct.
one word on Instagram,
Yeah.
but also tell us
That's
if,
the
if
website
that's the
name.
website name. Okay.
That's all the social media names. So that's where you can find me, NicoleIntuitiveMedium.com or on Instagram. I've got, you know, I'm a little bit on all of them just to
Yeah.
try and connect with people. So you can find me on most of the social medias that way. So
Great.
thank you so
Highly
much,
recommend
Shannon.
that you connect with Nicole Intuitive Medium. You are so welcome. And thank you for being here. This
Oh,
has been so much fun for me. And I hope everyone else will feel the same, which I believe they will. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening with an open heart and mind, for your likes, subscribes, leaving comments below, and sharing with like minded friends. Your support means the world, and I could not do this without you.